the team's everything.
Yeah.
Like, your product is one thing. The people that you surround yourself with to build a company, it's how you win. It's also how you lose. So getting the right people in the right seats.
The New Zealand Business Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, your strategic and proactive IT partner.
Greetings, I'm your host Paul Spain, futurist and chief executive at Gorilla Technology. I love seeing individuals and their organisations thrive, and this is what the New Zealand Business Podcast is all about, through sharing the learnings of our most incredible leaders and innovators so that we can draw from that knowledge, that experience, and each achieve our best, whether that's in New Zealand or on the global stage. Today, we're featuring Sam Kidd, co-founder and chief executive of LawVu, a legal technology platform built specifically for in-house legal teams. Sam co-founded LawVu in 2015 with a focus on building software to lift efficiency in in-house legal departments. Now, like many founders, Sam built LawVu to solve a problem that he had personally experienced. Whilst working in project management, he found that the communication experience with legal teams seemed fragmented, slow, and lacking in visibility. That insight sparked the vision for a unified legal workspace, and within just a few years, LawVu went global, winning customers across the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, and beyond. Today, LawVu is recognised as the first truly connected platform for in-house legal teams, and it has become one of New Zealand's fastest growing tech companies in 2023, ranking ninth in the Deloitte Fast 50, recently securing a significant funding round to support its international expansion, which values the company at around 400 million New Zealand dollars. In this episode, Sam shares the story behind LawVu, the challenges of building a legal tech platform from New Zealand, and the immense importance of building a great team and culture. The New Zealand Business Podcast is proudly brought to you by One New Zealand and Gorilla Technology. And before we jump into the interview, a quick question. How confident are you in your business's cybersecurity? A cyber attack costs a typical New Zealand mid-size or smaller business over $180,000, and I certainly don't want that to happen to you. So I'm offering our podcast listeners a one-off free cybersecurity risk reduction call valued at up to $500. You'll get a personalised action plan to lower your cyber risk. Seriously good value with no strings attached. If you're interested, tap the link in the show notes or on the episode page. Note there are limited sessions available. Well, great to have you on the New Zealand Business Podcast, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks very much for having me.
You know, it's been incredible sort of watching from a distance the LawVu story, but keen to delve in and hear a bit about your story and your background and to, you know, really delve into what you've achieved with LawVu over the last sort of decade or so. So maybe we can start at the beginning. You know, where were you born and where'd you grow up?
Yeah, was born in New Zealand, but not necessarily raised in New Zealand. So I was kind of here for the first sort of 10-ish years, and then pretty much from the time was 10, 11, moved to Ireland. So my dad was kind of coaching rugby back kind of, yes, certainly before the professional era. So ended up, what was supposed to be a 2-year stint turned into a lot longer for me. And then, yes, pretty much kind of grew up in Ireland. Never really imagined myself kind of living back in New Zealand. I think, you know, kind of once you kind of got into Europe, and always kind of looked at New Zealand as home. And then it was 2013, kind of moved back here with a family. Just thought it seemed like a nice place to come for kind of a year. And I think my parents had just moved down here out Papamel way, and we're kind of sending photos of them strolling on the beach. And in winter, it was warmer than the summer we were currently having in Ireland. So we're like, okay, let's just move back for a year and kind of experience that. And yeah, 1 year has turned into 13. So it was kind of like, it was quite a strange thing. I always kind of got picked up as a Kiwi overseas. And then when you move back, obviously my accent had morphed a little bit more Irish. And so it was kind of like a foreigner coming home in some ways, because I wasn't used to the New Zealand way of kind of living and stuff. So yeah, it was a really interesting experience, but yeah, I've really enjoyed being back here. And yeah, obviously it's, you know, kind of led to the creation of LawVu as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be quite an unusual return when you know, really spent so much time away if you left when you were 10. So
Yeah. I had a small stint back here. I was in New Plymouth Boys High as a boarder for about a year and a half, kind of like the school C age, which I don't even know what that is here now.
Yeah,
like
15 or so.
Yeah, and then had a whole lot of different companies in Ireland. And the last companies in which when I moved back, I was still currently in was kind of in the online project management space. So when I moved back to New Zealand, it was really with the eye of kind of servicing our clients that were on the west coast of the US. And so I could do that as kind of before, I suppose, remote working was really a thing, and it was easier for us to support them from there. And then kind of one thing led to another, end up kind of selling out of the company back to the founders. So I got to take a little bit of cash off the table, and that was when I was kind of looking around, what would I kind of do next? And when I moved back to New Zealand, I was like, I suppose I've been so out of the community here, and then out of the business community, and so I got involved in startup weekends, which was quite a big thing in New Zealand around that kind of 2013, 2014 sort of stage. And so I ended up doing a lot of mentoring and just trying to network my way around. And, legal came up a few times during that. And also during my process of kind of setting out of my company, I got to experience the utter joy of dealing with lawyers and what that process was like and just how foreign it was to me. So LawVu in some ways was kind of born a little bit out of kind of scratching my own personal itch, like how do I engage lawyers better? How do I have any sort of concept as to what's required to be done? And during that process, when I moved back here, because everything I was doing was remote, I'd set up a co-working space here. And so I got to kind of meet folks there since I wasn't kind of working with anyone kind of locally. And one of the people that was in the co-working space with me recommended a friend who was at a law firm, kind of working on the business service side, a guy named Tim Boyne, who had already kind of started doing something in that sort of space. And so we kind of met, and it was a meeting of minds, and some of the background that I had in the kind of online project management space and trying to create tasks and templates was very similar to the work that he was kind of working on. How do you template the structure of a legal matter? And kind of one thing led to another, and we ended up kind of catching up. And then, sort of LawVu was kind of born out of that in some ways.
This was what, around
2014, 2015 is kind of, 2014 is when we started kind of kicking around an idea. I suppose it's the one thing when you've kind of come out of a successful company, that fear of starting again and failing, which I'd never sort of had before. Like I've been involved in a ton of businesses from the time I left school. I'd been in video production, had an internet gaming cafe, I'd serve hot dogs and donuts to drunk people, and sort of like, so I've kind of done the retail business and then end up in a software business, and kind of as SaaS was becoming a thing. So that was the last I was in was a SaaS company, and we had millions and millions of users, and then you're into starting again. And that was probably, starting LawVu was probably the first time I was actually scared about starting another business, because it's like I had money in the bank, things was kind of going well, and I was like, well, what happens if I've mucked this up, basically? And we're kind of like, where do you go? And so, and you're also older, have kids, have a mortgage, and all those sorts of things were kind of different. But it was, so I spent more time trying to kill LawVu in the early days as to, this shouldn't work. Like, why should this work? Why should people care about this? And every kind of step we took along the path is like, well, this needs to exist. And we kind of kept finding reasons to continue, because I suppose it was a strange concept. Like, we were creating a category, and we were creating something that people weren't necessarily asking for, but we could just see this gap in this kind of greenfield space, which when I first got into it, I thought like a greenfield space would be awesome, but greenfields is actually so much work, because you also then have to educate the market and kind of bring people on the journey. For those that don't know what LawVu is, like, LawVu is a platform that sits inside corporate legal teams, and we really kind of help structure the day-to-day workflow. So for the way that the legal team inside these organizations deal with themselves, how they communicate with each other, how they store documents, how they store files, how they capture communication from the business, so how they interact with the wider business, and then also how they send instructions out to external law firms, and then collaborate on that work, but also capture the invoices and things that come in. So we are kind of that cradle to grave around all the legal work and knowledge and information that kind of goes on inside a corporate legal team. It's fascinating that when you think about that was a greenfield space. Like, we're going into companies that actually didn't have anything at all. So they were basically just operating on the Microsoft suite of Outlook and Word, but didn't actually have a product like a sales team would have Salesforce. So it was fascinating for me that was a space that no one had really kind of tackled. So in some ways it seemed like a really obvious sort of thing that needed to exist, but bringing people on the journey from nothing to something, it's certainly been a journey.
Yeah. So tell me about the co-founder relationship and how quickly did you kind of click and feel like that was an opportunity that was worth really putting more time into exploring?
Tim and I clicked really quickly. And like, I think about this quite a lot, and because like I know people that got into business with folks that have known for a long, long time, and it hasn't worked. It's been an absolute car crash, and like I could probably count on one hand the amount of disagreements or arguments that Tim and myself would have had in the early days, considering we didn't know each other, we had no background or history and things. Yeah, like I suppose the things that we wanted to achieve, the way that we kind of tackle problems was similar in some ways and complementary in others, where we were kind of like, we're both from the business side, so we kind of, I suppose, end up filling each other's gaps around kind of things. And we were probably a little bit clear in the early days as to who would look after product, who would look after the business side of things. So Tim was kind of doing the product, but then we started wrapping other people around us quite quickly. So kind of Sarah, who kind of came in as our kind of chief technical officer, Patrick, who I'd known from a kind of past life in Ireland, who was kind of came in as our CFO, and then kind of ended up with Mark, who was doing all the digital kind of design work and that, who I'd kind of met through other work here, and Sean, who kind of met through LinkedIn. So we ended up kind of getting the small founding team quite quickly. Yeah, and like Tim and I worked away and spent a huge amount of time literally in each other's pockets, because in the early days when you don't have any cash, like I think about all the travel that we did, and we're sharing rooms, we're at the back of the plane, shoulder to shoulder the whole time. So yeah, like it was a very interesting process as to that first introduction. Right from the introduction, it was just banging away, worked together for so many years.
What did that initial, period look like in terms of building out something initially, finding customers, capital? How did those things fit together? Were you getting early customers?
I think that the short version is it was freaking painful. I think that's it. When you look from the outside in, it always looks like fun, and it always looks like things happen really quickly. When you live it day to day, like the first 3 years was super grinding. You don't have customers, you're trying to build product. We're building product in a very regulated space. You're dealing with the most sensitive data of most organizations. So you can kind of get to that MVP stage quite quickly when you're building. And then we got to roll into a customer, and we roll into massive multi-billion-dollar organizations that don't really like the MVP approach. So what's your security kind of infrastructure? What's all your documentation, which ISO certifications, all that sort of side of things. And then you're kind of get into a pilot customer, and then it's, we need this feature, we need this feature. So the first 3 years was a lot. It was quite lonely in the fact that you're just building product, and you got a relatively small team, be it 1 or 2 people kind of doing that, because you can't afford more.
Yeah.
And you know that you can't sell. So you get to a certain stage where we kind of would get in front of people, would get them on board, and then they would generate feedback around the massive gaps that we had in the product.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, that way we don't want to burn our leads, and so you almost can't sell. So you're trying to talk to people while you're trying to fix these huge gaps, and then you get to that next stage, and then you kind of roll back out and start talking to people and that. So yeah, like it was basically 3 years of really building the product with little to no traction, other than some early pilot customers and some positive feedback. And also you're out in the market trying to talk to people, and you know that there's a gap, you know you're solving a problem, but you can't address that problem just yet. So yeah, as you can imagine, when you're trying to bring clients on and you're trying to grow a product but you don't have any sales, that obviously eats into your pocket. So yeah, I was 5 years without any sort of salary or wage at all, so I was kind of investing money into the company. And then we got some local angel investors that were able to put some cash in, so we kind of raised in some ways in dribs and drabs. So you sort of like, you get 400,000 or 500,000, and then you got some sort of proof points, and then you kind of raise another little bit, and then I think we were starting to kind of get somewhere. We started to have a bit of traction with some clients overseas, and later it enabled us to kind of do like a $3 million round with some kind of super angels and that started to kind of get us on the map. So yeah, it's again, when you kind of live it day to day, it's like you you feel busy, but you feel like you're not achieving a lot. And then people on the outside, it looks like it's going really quickly because they just see the flashpoints or the proof points or the things that you're kind of loading into LinkedIn. Like I'd be in Australia and meeting all these epic people in the legal ops community, which was one client. But again, it's how you promote yourself and all that sort of smoke and mirrors that kind of comes with that in the kind of the early days. But yeah, like you look back now with rose tinted glasses as to the fun days. But yeah, like it's so much work. Like I think of anyone that's starting off now, you take your hat off to them because like there's so much to get done with so little resources in the early days.
Yeah, it's through those harder times that often the biggest learnings in someone come. What would you say were those kind of key learnings from the earlier phases of LawVu? Because obviously you have to have a real level of tenacity to kind of keep going for a period of years when, you haven't kind of cracked it as such, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to, you ride the line of being absolutely and utterly crazy and believing too much your own Kool-Aid, but being able to kind of spot the reasons as to this should exist. And that's what I kind of mean. In the early days, you're trying really hard to be like, is this really a thing? Are people, because also when you ask people for feedback, everyone's like, oh, yeah, I love, like, really like this. Like, it's really hard to get really honest feedback because it's like when you go to a restaurant and everyone's like, did you enjoy your meal? And you're like, I loved it. And you're thinking, that's terrible. I'm never coming back here again. Because most people want to be nice the whole time. And so you have to kind of be able to filter that feedback that you talk to people about. And so you're trying to ask in certain ways about what are you trying to do here? What are you trying to achieve? And you can see by the usage patterns of what they're doing as to what are the actual real gaps. And so I think that's probably the secret in the early days is you've got to really ask probably more the why, because I think if you're looking kind of for feedback as to do you like this or do you enjoy this, if you ask the wrong questions, you end up with a kind of a false positive and you can kind of continue forward and you're not really addressing the right things. So I think that whole point of kind of being curious and questioning yourself the whole time and question why customers or potential customers are doing the thing they're doing or not doing it becomes your kind of secret sauce.
And how easy was the sort of the early capital that you raised? How, I'm guessing easy is probably the wrong word to talk about raising capital usually.
Weirdly, it's easier. Well, I'd say it's easier in the early days. I always think of that. I don't know if you've ever watched that sitcom kind of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And they talk about, they're like, we need to get to revenue. And it's like, no, we want to be pre-revenue. And the craziness of that is actually true because once you're into revenue, your stats and your statistics and all your data points and things like that are far more kind of under scrutiny. In the early days, it's based on the idea what you believe you can do, and there isn't much to dig in on other than do people believe that this is the team that can achieve that your hypothesis on what the market could do and what their TAM could be, like that's infectious if you kind of go the right way and people can kind of believe in that. Once you're there and you're selling and then you can prove or you can't prove how easy this is to sell, that's when people kind of dig in. So kind of weirdly as we got further down the track, every raise is always like, well, it's going to be easier after we did a Series A during COVID, but each subsequent raises are almost harder because you really have to then back into the data and the numbers, and you've got a lot more modeling. There's a lot more kind of reason behind the why we should take this and what can that actually kind of be. So yeah, in some ways, or whether it's just you kind of a little bit naive and gung-ho in the early days. So you're like, yeah, we got this. So yeah, the early raises almost easier in some ways, and it's smaller sums of cash. You know, when you're kind of talking about raising 500,000 or a couple of million, you know, it's different to kind of, we've raised probably about 50 to 60 million to date now, kind of done those in tranches throughout the time. So yeah, every raise comes with its challenges, and then it's economic conditions, what's kind of happening, what the sort of macros in the space and things like that as well, that they kind of change that dynamic.
How did sort of building out that early team look? You know, it seems you did, pretty well with bringing together a great group early on. How did you achieve that?
Yeah, that like the team is everything, and so being able to identify people that have the same passion and excitement around the space, and so like there's a bit of serendipity there. You get lucky certainly with folks, but you also get used to kind of just talking to people and kind of seeing, can you bring people on that journey with you? And like all our early team has pretty much been there right from the get-go. same as you kind of scale as a company, the selling people on the dream, and also kind of learning about what skills that they have. And so like I always kind of believe like I've got talents in certain areas, but I also know that I need to bring other people on who I can also let loose, because I don't know as much around engineering. I don't know as much around kind of the product design. And so you're looking for people that you can bring into the company and enable them to do their best work. So I was kind of on that whole track of like spotting that talent, bringing them in, enabling them, and then there's an ownership from them as well. I think when people own something, they feel like they're contributing, then they give their full selves as well. And so it's like, how do you get that right? I think that's always the danger of a founder, is that trying to get that balance right between how much you should lean in and how many grenades you can throw, and then how much do you trust the people that you brought in. And if you're just bringing in bodies to tell people what to do, you're never going to get the best work out of people. So it's that real enablement kind of piece. And like I think it's been one of the joys of building LawVu, is seeing people come in with just incredible talent and being able to see what they produce. And like I'll sit in some design meetings or some of the kind of product engineering, and you kind of listen to the things that they're solving, doing each day, and it's like this weird kind of almost like an out of body experience. You're like, I'm sitting there being, I don't have a freaking clue what half these people are talking about. How did I convince these super intelligent people to join? And you just listen to the passion that they have for your baby and your product that you've kind of created, and they've helped elevate it and bring it to the next level. And I think that's for me, that's that excitement in the building a company like this, is enabling people to do their best work and take your idea to a whole other level that you couldn't have imagined. And then for me, it's like, how do you help steer? We need to steer and give guidance, but allow people to kind of do their thing.
So what's been your approach to get that to work and give people that opportunity to achieve their best work?
Part of that's the nature nurture thing, is it's just my way of operating. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit like, how do you breathe? It's something that I just don't think about. It's probably, if that's been my superpower that I've kind of have, and it's starting a company, it's been able to kind of do that, find the right people, give enough guidance around what we're trying to achieve, but then be able to kind of listen. I think like I wasn't as good with that in the early days. And so I think it's like probably getting better as I get older, is to learning when to lean in or when to be quiet as well, because it's as a founder voice, your voice carries a lot of weight, good and bad. And so it's like, when can you use that for good? But it can be super distracting if you kind of roll in and just say something. It's like tossing a grenade into a meeting, and then suddenly everyone starts leaning across to, okay, maybe we should be doing this. And so, yeah, I'd love to say I have that spot on, but maybe if you interview the rest of the team, they'll be like, it's so painful when he comes into this meeting as well. So yeah, it's you're trying to get that balance right the whole time. And and that it's probably sometimes that I've done that really well, other times where not as much.
How important has the hiring been for you? And presuming that's pretty closely connected.
Yeah, the team's everything.
Yeah.
The like, your product is one thing. The people that you surround yourself with to build a company is, without a doubt, I think it's how you win. It's also how you lose as well. And so getting the right people in the right seats. And I think probably where we've been better is as we kind of get older and kind of mature into the kind of company, is, when do you make those tough calls around, okay, this person got us to this place, but we actually need to bring someone else in now, which is not a very Kiwi thing to do. Like the way it's kind of structured, like, and also, to the restaurant comment, like, everyone likes giving positive feedback, but like, it's hard giving feedback which isn't always nice. And it's like, and you're trying to do it in a way that's kind, and like we always sort of say, assume positive intent. Like, you're trying to bring people on a journey, you're trying to make sure that you're offering feedback which they can do, which is constructive, which can do something with. And that's a skill that it's taken us time to kind of learn. How do you kind of pass that down to other people inside the organization? And we're still trying to get better with that. But yeah, bringing people in, but also working out how you kind of let people go like business is ruthless in a sort of way. Like you've got numbers and targets. You've got to build a product that people want, and you've got to surround yourself with the right people. And I know people often talk about a business from, like it's like a family, but it's not. It's not a family. It's a team.
No.
And so,
Yeah.
like, it's been really interesting to see when we bring people in who've had a sporting background, have been in professional sports, and in sports, like you're at the right place, the right time, and then you change the division, and you're not the right person. It's like you're gone.
You're
Like,
gone. Yeah.
look at we've just cut our All Black coach, and like you can't say he's not a successful coach. Like the background and pedigree and the results he had in before in the last gig, hands down, you would have thought he would have been the right person for the job, but it just didn't work in this environment. And they've made the tough call there, but it doesn't mean that he's not a good coach. And I think that's the same inside a company. You can have the right person in the wrong role, and then the kindest thing to do is actually have them leave, and they can go somewhere else and they'll be so successful because that company will just suit their skill set and the kind of what they're doing. So that's, I think, kind of the approach that we start to take with people is like it is a team, and it's time and place and role, and sometimes you get that right, but if you don't, you have to actually kind of address that.
What's your approach to addressing that with people? How do you do that? Obviously, there's in New Zealand we've got particular kind of legal framework around how you exit people from different places in the world. So you've got to have your head around all of those things because you've got how many countries have you got people in?
Yeah, I think it's about 16 different countries now.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's different rules and regs for each country. I think the approach that you want to take is like just an honest approach with people. So regardless of the laws, if you can have an honest conversation with someone, most people will take that on board, and then you can like, we look at the way you onboard people, but how do you offboard people in a positive way, and you're trying to do the right thing by people. So you're not looking to just walk in like you can in the US and be like, everyone that side of the building, you got a week to go, away you go, and leave. So again, it's your approach to it, and I think honest conversations with folks, which is hard to do, and I know people can listen to this and be like, well, they weren't as honest conversations as it would have liked, and we get better at it, and sometimes we do it well, sometimes we don't. But I just think the laws are there. You want to make sure that you're following the kind of the right legal routes, but in the end, it's people to people, and it's a lot of it's conversations, and you want to make sure that you're setting people up for success. And if it's not working, you need to have that conversation, and then you can go from there. But it can be quite a kind of a mutual process in some ways.
And in terms of your experience with going through those, I guess each individual, you can sit down and have an honest conversation, but each person is going to be unique in their response, aren't they? So I guess that can be pretty painful to kind of, for the person, on the receiving end of such a conversation, and it can be pretty challenging, I'm sure, for
The person
for you when
giving
you
it.
have to have that, right?
Yeah, like like it's not often myself who's giving that, because we got hiring managers and people that look after. Like, it's being on the receiving end is tough. Being the person giving the news is hard. It's so hard to do because you like, unless you're an absolute and utter psycho, you've got empathy. You understand what it would be like if you're on the receiving end, and so that's what I mean. You're trying to do the right thing and have a conversation with like in a, we're assuming positive intent and you're trying to do the right thing, but like the outcome's not always nice for both. And like I don't know of anyone that enjoys letting people go at all. And like, I think you look at this during COVID, like I always kind of look at all the rifts and things that companies had to do. But in New Zealand, it was hard work. Like, I think of like, we've got a lot of folks from zero, and so you heard the stories where the decision was predetermined, even though you can't by law, but you have to go through this convoluted process because in the end, a business needs to survive, and you've got outgoings and you got incoming, and if your incoming's not matching your outgoings, like, you have to make tough calls. But the laws are set out there where you have to go through such a long process. Everyone knows what the outcome's going to be, but you drag it on, and it's mentally taxing on both sides. And so it's like, those laws are there to protect, but they also do hindrance a lot of work when in the end, it's like, there isn't an unlimited amount of cash inside an organization. You need to make those calls. I think that's where the US can react really fast. And so, like, that was to our benefit, because obviously when COVID hit, US laid off a ton of staff incredibly quickly. That was a massive opportunity for us, because suddenly remote working became a thing, and we were able to pick up some epic people really quickly who wanted to work remote for a New Zealand company, and we were kind of away. So, but New Zealand companies were slow to react. You saw how slow New Zealand was to actually come out of COVID, because
Yes.
companies were running out of cash. They were kind of put themselves into this kind of dangerous position. They couldn't react quickly to it through the people side. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
And what's your approach to hiring? How do you go about finding people, and what are your techniques there?
I think it's different for me, it was very conversational with folks. Like, the culture piece is huge. Obviously, once people kind of go through and you're looking for people with the right talent, and like I say, like, everyone can act really well for a really short period of time. So you don't always know. I was always trying to look at, how do I get out of this, like a very kind of heavy process interview, and make it more human conversation without it feeling very stilted at times, because it's a nerve-wracking process to kind of be, if you really want a job, and you sort of like, you're trying to give these perfect answers, and you're like, this is not, I don't believe that this is the way you kind of actually kind of operate. And then other people will just get too loose and like, oh, this is kind of a chilled interview. They start talking like, okay, interesting. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's you're just trying to break the formality of an interview. Was kind of my approach to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And in terms of building that global workforce, how how challenging was it for you to find the right people, particularly in those early days? But I guess as you've scaled, you've been able to bring in roles to really help and facilitate that
Yeah,
that hiring and growth. I'm picking.
yeah. The early days is certainly harder. Like, I'm terrified around the culture piece. Like, what's that going to be like to bring people in overseas? Are they going to feel like they belong with LawVu? Like, is it going to suddenly be an us versus them kind of mentality? Which, in some cases, in the early days, it was a little bit like that when you're bringing US staff on, because US staff always used to be in top dog, and now suddenly all the decisions have been driven out of New Zealand, of which the US is our biggest market. So with some of the people they'll be like, but we should be the ones kind of making some of the control decisions, because we're in the US, and we're the biggest market, and we used to be in bigger companies, we know. But so you kind of end up with that kind of power struggle. So that's sort of when you realize that you haven't got the right people there. But that was also because you end up with a massive time lag as well, where you're trying to bring people on board, and you don't have enough people in one country for it to feel like they've got enough people to surround themselves with and to ask questions. So for them, it's like they're working their day by themselves, and then we come online, and then they're gone. And so that it's always really hard. And probably obviously the hardest is when we started to stand up the UK team, and we ended up asking one of our team here to move over, and so she moved over and is still there. So we'll probably be a third year. I think she's doing one more year in the UK, and that was in some ways to ship our culture over there, but for her to be that kind of voice, and to kind of help rally the team, and bring that team on when they're small, until it starts to kind of develop its own LawVu culture, and they've got enough teammates around them to be able to kind of answer questions and get shit done, and actually kind of sort of operate. And then you end up with our offsite. So we do 2 offsites a year. We do a go to market at the start of the year, and we do our EPO, which is our engineering, product and operations offsite. And so we bring everyone in to one space. So we brought our whole go to market team, which is global, into HQ last year. This year we'll be in Hawaii, and so we're flying everyone in. All the engineering product offsite we did in Rotorua last year, we did in Auckland this year, because most of that operations and engineering is in New Zealand.
Yes.
So when you're like, we're 160 people globally now, trying to actually bring people together and unite them, and then we try to do that on a smaller scale, where we bring our sales team in to have them kind of collaborate together, because everyone's kind of remote. And so yeah, it's like, I'm jealous when I kind of read books from other founders who have had everyone in the, I'm gonna say the olden days, but you're thinking like through the 90s and early 2000s where everyone was in the one office or in separate offices, like that culture piece and just that water cooler moments that we're trying to create virtually now.
Yes.
Because there's so much information that you transfer through osmosis by hearing conversations that you have to now somehow look at how do you recreate those moments through a Teams call or through Slack or bringing people together and kind of having those kind of touch points. So yeah, I actually think that culture piece is so much harder to do now. Like even in New Zealand, we're about 100 people through NZ. We're still geographically spread. We're about 40 here in HQ, and then we're split between Christchurch and Auckland and Wellington and some folks in Invercargill and that. So yeah, like even inside New Zealand, you're quite geographically spread now.
So, walk us through how you went from your initial team was working together here in Tauranga.
Yep.
What were the triggers to hire in different, locations? Obviously, at times it's like, well, we need to sell into this market, we need people and so on. But there's always I guess a mix of drivers at times.
Yeah, the fact that our markets are in other geographies was the driver. So our engineering and operations has always kind of been NZ based. The fact that Patrick, who joined, was CFO, he was already based in Ireland. So right from the get go, we kind of had someone who was overseas, and that was just because he was my contact and someone that I trusted with my life and with our bank balance and that as well. And so he was the right person to kind of bring in. I think that the fact that a lot of us on the founding team, when I look, like obviously myself, I spent a huge amount of time overseas in Ireland. Sarah, who came as CTO, was from the UK, who had just moved back here.
Yep.
Sean, who's on our legal team, is from the UK, who'd been living in Hamilton. So he was, he was remote for us. Some of our engineers were kind of Auckland based. So we were kind of local, but we were actually quite remote right from the get go. And then, yeah, as we looked to bring people overseas, I was doing a huge amount of travel. It's like if you're going to sell into the US market, you need people in the US market to talk the talk as well. And so, like you do quite well selling remotely, and we were kind of doing that whole remote sale before it was a thing. COVID was obviously a horrible experience for the world, but I think for New Zealand, like it flattened the world for us. I think a lot of tech companies have actually kind of reap the rewards from that, because suddenly we had the muscle memory from being able to sell and operate remotely, and then it wasn't weird for us to be joining a Zoom call or Teams call and selling. They in some ways they stopped asking what's it going to be like to buy software from a New Zealand company, because that was a real block in the early days. And so that's why we put people on the ground. We wanted people with a US accent, so they would stop asking I don't know, like it was a real thing back then that this is, are you going to be supported from New Zealand? I don't know. Like,
yeah.
And then that just vanished literally overnight.
Yeah.
But that was our reason. We still wanted to have our support and sales and implementation in market, just from a time zone perspective, because it just, like I worked all the hours every day. So you're talking to the UK, you're kind of obviously doing all the night time, and then you're starting to get into selling into East Coast. And so you're up really early and doing that. And you can do that for a period of time. Then you realize you have to have folks in region. And that was the driver.
Yeah. Yeah. And through this sort of journey, how stretched have you been at different times? It seems reasonably common for the work hours to get pretty crazy in a new business in the startup world. How's that played out for you?
It probably depends on who you ask. Like I enjoy the busyness.
Yeah.
I suppose it comes out, if you enjoy what you do, it doesn't feel as much like work. Like there is times where it is quite grinding. And I logged my flight time for the first time in the 10 years last year. I did like 320 hours, I think, of flying. I knew I spent about kind of 3 months of the year kind of out of the country and did that pre-COVID. And then obviously I think that was quite nice to not travel as much then, and then have kind of kicked that back off. There's times where, that feels hard when you're away from family and that as well. But I suppose I enjoy the work that I do when I'm there. And I always looked at it as this is a marathon. And so, I try to get this with the team as well. I think this when you're kind of building a company, you want everyone to be go, 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 go. But if you do that all the time, if everything is always at 110, it's like everything's crucial, everything's on fire, people will flame out.
Yeah.
And so, like anything, you've got to learn, and it's fun when you've got sprints like that. Like, and at times in the marathon, you're feeling good, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go harder, and you have the deadlines, and you're achieving things, and you're knocking things out of the park, and you're hitting things, and you're getting the positive feedback, and that energizes you, and then you finish that sprint, and everyone's like, oh, I'm exhausted, but you get recharged from the energy of what you've achieved, and then the pace kind of slows, and you're kind of in the planning stage, and then everyone gets riled up and ready to go. And I suppose now that we've got more people in the company, you're kind of doing that in different phases with different groups. And so, like Q4 obviously is a massive sales time. So we operate calendar year here. Like the sales team, legal was at absolute 110 through November, December. Our product team will start to do the planning phase. They kind of slow down, and then so they're starting to kind of recharge, and that obviously fits with the New Zealand summer. And then we start to ramp up, and then things for us, it will be full tilt during the summer period with the sales team in the US, and that are kind of coming down. So you start to kind of balance that through different regions, and then you need to listen to yourself. And at times it's like, I think people talk about burning themselves out, and it's you got to be able to identify that yourselves. You need to make sure you surround yourself with the right team and people that can pick you up. Yeah, it's a little bit of like it's again, it's kind of back to that sports. Like I played rugby a lot when growing up, and you feel that there's times when you going onto the pitch, you're like, I just don't have the energy, but the rest of the team kind of lifts you for that, and then you get going, and then you're kind of into it, and vice versa, where you're lifting other people. And so, yeah, I'd love to say I have the perfect formula for that, but yeah, it's a little bit of trial and error. But I think the fact it comes down to I just freaking love what I do.
Yeah. Well, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? And then you get a lot more energy when you
And
love what you do.
when you're winning,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and so making sure that you've got those goals that you can achieve and hit. And so, like, you always think about what you want to achieve, and those are the, I suppose, those dreams and those highlights that you kind of have, and they sit out there. If you just focus on those the whole time, I think it would become grinding, and you'd be like, well, I'm just so far away from achieving that. So then you peel back to what are the little things that I can achieve now that I tick that off, and we've won that, or we've done that, or we've hit that milestone. I've hit that milestone.
Yeah.
I think, like, we're not great at doing that as Kiwis, at celebrating those wins. We're a little bit like, oh, stoic, yeah, it's all right,
Yeah.
The US are better. I think other countries are better at celebrating those. And so I think, but those those moments are the things that also energize you. And that times when you get to a certain milestone, when you actually look back at what you've achieved, because you never feel like that. When you're building a company, I think that's what I've started to realize, is that you are never happy. You never reach that nirvana. And if you look at every successful company out there, if you look at Apple, if you look at Microsoft, or like, they're never happy with where they're at, because if they don't reach that next milestone, then the shares tank and the company's terrible. But you always think, well, they should be happy. But the only way to do that is to look back and reflect on what you've actually achieved. And I think you actually can achieve so much in a year, and you're like, oh, and then it's like, okay, cool, now let's go for the next thing and the next thing. And then you have those little wins the whole time. And as long as the team is winning, then everyone feels pumped up about kind of what they're doing. And I think that the hard times is like during COVID, where it got harder to hit things and budgets being pulled and you're not hitting your numbers. Like, those are tough friggin' times to pull the team through that. And you can do that for a short period of time. But yeah, that's tough.
And so, how do you tend to celebrate wins with your team? How do you make that work when it's not, all in person? It's not all remote. You've kind of got that mix of people. You have to take different approaches and different teams and different situations. I'm picking.
Yeah, obviously we do our all hands. We've got our annual sort of kickoff all hands, which will be next week, and then we'll celebrate the year that was, and so kind of go through the milestones throughout the year. We'll have kind of moments where you get to the end of the quarter and you talk about the wins that you've done, or if Mark and you have had a huge campaign, they'll kind of post the things and talk about what they've done, and then people kind of celebrate. You celebrate as an organization for the big things, and then also there's the smaller team kind of things where the marketing team will celebrate this, or the CX team will celebrate, or sales will do this, and they kind of bring people together. And like, a lot of my travel is not just catching up with clients, but catching up with the team, and you're doing the team dinners and the team drinks, and you're kind of just talking about what's worked, and you're congratulating people for what they've achieved, and you're talking about what the next thing's going to be. And so, like, a lot of those touch points become really important. It's a lot of fun, and it's, let's say it's something that we're trying to get better at. And then we're like, we do our company awards now. So for our engineering offsite, we had kind of the engineering awards and product awards. It's weird, like in the early days, I think it's really kind of felt naff and embarrassing, which it shouldn't. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing to kind of let you celebrate, and now you see how much it means to people to win an MVP for kind of engineering, or to win awards for support and all the work that they've kind of done, how much it means to them.
Yeah.
Like I actually find it really hard to watch those, because it get like, there's no way, there's not a hope I could present any of those awards, like emotionally, which is such a weird thing. Like happy things like that tear me up.
Yeah.
I think because I see how much it means to people and how much it means to me and how much they care. And so, yeah, like those sort of award things. So now our go-to-market that we have coming up next month, like there's a whole bunch of sales awards and CX awards, and just celebrating the epic work that people have done throughout the year. But yeah, I'll be in the background trying to, who's cutting onions near me? I'm like, yeah, no, it's good. It's really, it's just, it's one of those things that just fills me with immense pride to see how much it means to other folks on the team for what they've achieved, and how hard they go to bat for LawVu day in, day out.
Yeah. What do you think are the hardest things that you and the team have achieved over this period? What would be the big points when you look back that you've really achieved something that has been really key for the business?
I think it'd be a really hard thing to call out, because they sort of feel like moments in time that when you look back now, it's almost kind of hard to pinpoint what they were. And a lot of it is, it's communication between teams, and handover points, and finessing kind of the process and the operations around how a lead comes into Salesforce, how an AE picks it up, what's the process, what's like that sales process and journey documents. Like back in the day when I did sales, like I'm jumping on the calls with folks, I'm chatting through things. I have zero PowerPoint and slide decks or anything now. Like if I was to jump on a sales call now and the sales team to look at me, I'd look like such an amateur chump doing what they do now. So the level that things that in every year you just get incrementally better, and I look at the process that we run now, how tight it is, and those are things that have been game changing. And then the way the sales team brings in our implementation team, the way they come in and they talk about what that implementation looks like to a potential customer, and then those handover points between our implementation and our customer success, who before were one team, and then they're kind of, we divided them, and now they're kind of the more united, so that the whole handover process is just smoother. The way our product and engineering team was separate and is now intertwined, and the way that the cadence and their operations and the kind of trios there between the designers and the product managers. And so like each one of those things, when you look back now, seems so obvious, but as you're growing as a company, you're trying to put those systems and processes in place. Those are the things that fundamentally have shifted us hugely, but they become really hard points to kind of to pinpoint the why. And a lot of it is freaking communications. Like it's how we talk and collaborate with each other, which when you think about it, it's absolutely mental. The why, like, why is that intercommunication between people is actually such a hard, difficult thing to get right, because people also have to feel comfortable about letting go of things, especially to scale. So when you're 20 people, you own a lot, and then you bring in other people, and it's like, okay, I don't need to do this now. I trust you explicitly, so I hand it off, and people are like, I don't want to hand this off. Like, I'm going to hold on to it, and that slows you down.
Yes.
And so, like, those are some of the things that's quite hard to explain to people, and to ourselves, as to what that's going to look like, and all those stages that you're going to have to kind of go through as you go from 20 to 50 people, from 50 to 100. We're what is at 160 people now. I know a lot of things that we have in place are going to break when we hit 200, because you're just going to end up with needing another layer. And so how are you going to communicate between those layers? You're going to bring in the management, and some of that was, for me, was, as we grew, was letting go of the hiring. Like I do almost no hiring now. And so you're trusting people with your process and to hire the right people and what that's going to look like. And so, like, for me, I was like for ages holding on to that. you have to trust the people that you bring in to be able to then bring in the right people. And so that happens in every area of the business as you scale up.
Mm. Yeah, we talked about sort of capital a little bit, but how did this last sort of capital raise, look? What did that look like for you? What were the sort of things that you had to put on the table? What are the sorts of things that you get, create pressure or challenge in the process? Obviously that went, pretty well. You come through with what, a $400 million valuation. Share a little bit of the
Super easy.
detail.
Yeah. Yeah. What you read in papers and the process that goes through, that's a journey. Like the valuation piece to me again is you want to be very careful around what that looks like and not fall into the trap of vanity metrics as well. And so like if I think about kind of our capital raise journey when we kind of were raising funds in the early days, I think the first Series A raise we did was about 12 million US at a $50 million valuation. I think US was sort of what we did. During that process, we were looking at other companies that were in a similar space in the contract management space that were raising 100 million at a $3 billion valuation with frickle revenue. And in the early days, I'm like, how and why? And I'm so jealous of all the money they have. But that valuation that you have there is now like a noose around their necks. It's like, how do you grow into that? And so while it's nice to have the large numbers, you have to pair it back to, am I actually going to be able to get there? Because it's really easy to give those valuations away in the early days. The devil's in the detail around what that actually kind of looks like if you start to move towards an exit, because I tell you, the way the contracts and stuff are written, the VCs aren't the ones that are risking anything. So as a founder, you need to be very mindful about what you feel is actually achievable, what you can kind of get to, and being willing to make sure that you feel comfortable with the targets and the goals that you've kind of set for yourself in that kind of valuation. And so same for this last round is looking at what our metrics are, what I suppose kind of a dilution and kind of willing to take, what that is going to mean for all the shareholders that we have on board, what that amount of capital is going to enable us to kind of do, and are we capitalizing ourselves enough to get to that kind of next milestone? Because that's hard if you don't bring enough capital on and you can't hit the milestones that you've set for yourselves on the valuation, then that next round's going to be quite painful. And we certainly had times during COVID where you kind of trying to raise capital and the markets had shifted and the valuation expectations had gone from insane kind of valuations to a more realistic kind of paring that back. But that put a lot of pressure on companies. So during this last round, you're always talking to people, you're always kind of out there seeing what's kind of going on in the market, and then obviously having good internal investors as well, and just trying to have honest and open conversations with them as to what we're trying to do, what that's going to look like, what metrics we have around acquiring kind of new customers, and really trying to kind of lay that story out. Because as I said at the start, the pre-revenue is much easier when you're in revenue and you've got sales stats and you've got retention stats and you've got churn stats and like how much does it cost to acquire a customer, people dig in a lot on those, and so those numbers and that story needs to kind of stack up. So there's a huge amount of work, especially that the finance team that we have here had to do and all the modeling to kind of make that happen. So as I said, you like to think that those rounds get easier and easier. What gets easier is I've got better and better people wrapped around me.
Yeah.
The work that goes into getting there, like it's a lot. It's a lot of work and a lot of people that you need to kind of bring on the journey as well.
Yeah. What can you share around your growth, sort of revenue wise and so on?
Like our growth wise, we're kind of we're sort of north of 40%, so kind of up there. The logo retention, the NRR, like we're that net retention revenue need to be, I think we're at 103, 104-ish kind of now. And then it's, like we spend a lot of time looking at kind of that logo retention that's up into the kind of up above into the 90s. So those sorts of metrics need to be top class to allow you to kind of pull the revenue in or pull the funding in. So we're obviously got our eyes set for kind of pushing towards that 50 million Kiwi, which we're kind of on track for now as well. It's just the next thing is how fast you can kind of get there and how you can do that in a way that's as cost efficient and effective as possible, and like, that's the game really.
Yeah, yeah. Now, one of the things that any business can go through is the different phases of people being in the business, people leaving the business. In your case, you're here leading the business, but Tim, as your co-founder, has exited along the way.
Hmm.
What was that sort of experience like? How did you guys sort of work through that? Was that a sort of a shock to you when you found that he wanted to move in another direction? Was that something you talked about for a period?
Yeah, I think it's always a shock, but not a shock. As in, like, we sort of knew and we started talking, and it was just a time where I think the age and stage of the company and the things that he really enjoyed weren't there as much in LawVu. And we talk about raising capital. When you raise capital, it's a different business. It's you're founders of a company, but it's your company, but not your company. Like, I'm under zero illusions that I could be axed in the morning, and like that's the game you play. I'm the highest individual shareholder. I'm not the largest shareholder as well, and people that invest millions and millions in you, they want their money back and then some, and so that changes the game, and the sort of stuff that Tim really enjoys, that scrappy stage at the start. They kind of be able to kind of move really quickly, and then you it just turned into a different animal. We just, we're having conversations around, talking about before, you kind of enjoying what you're doing, and we're doing a lot of travel. The stage that his family was at, he wanted to do less travel, and he was also getting really excited about a few other opportunities that were kind of appearing. And so, yeah, you have that conversation. It's, as I said, like, we could count on one hand the amount of arguments he sort of had, and it just turned into a good, robust convo. Bit of tears were shed, probably from both sides, and yeah, like, I spent, as I said, spent more time with him in those kind of early years than I probably did with my family. So yeah, we got incredibly close, and we're still in contact all the time in that as well. So yeah, it's tough. I think that the same with anyone that's kind of been in a company for a long time, whether it's kind of in the founding team or not, is there's ages and stage, and we had people that really enjoyed the holding all the Legos and doing everything, and then as the company grows and the team changes, they want to go back to that size of a company. And like, we always talk about that, like, I really want to see people that were really successful here go on and kind of and do the same thing somewhere else, and kind of bring that knowledge and experience on. Not right now for everyone, because we've got quite a strong team, but it's the same as like when we were starting. Like, we were going around trying to approach as many zero folks as we could, because we were trying to fast track the learning that we needed, because they were the company that had been there and scaled. And so, like, I wanted that experience. And so you're reaching out to people that were, again, had gone from the small stage in zero all the way up to the kind of scale that they were at. It's like, well, if they were to come to us, like, they would just fast track us, and would move a lot faster. And it was true. And so you bring those people in, and that's exactly what, like, I know we've got people reaching out to some LawVu staff, and some of the team who have done that here have already started in kind of other places. And it's awesome to kind of watch their journey and see what they do. Well, so that's, I'd love to see that LawVu alumni actually kind of out there doing things. But again, this is not a don't start poaching my folks yet. we've still got a lot to do, and a lot of things to kind of hit this year. So yeah, back off, people.
Yeah, and looking at New Zealand as a place to to build LawVu, and even down to Tauranga, Bay of Plenty region, what do you think are the strengths and maybe some of the weaknesses too that we have, or the pros and cons of starting and running firm from here, as opposed to being headquartered in Silicon Valley or UK or another market?
I think that the hardest thing here is the talent. I do think that is changing. Like, if you look at that kind of cohort of companies that are on the rise now, there's the Auras, there's the Rocket Labs, there's the Halters, there's like I was looking at Icehouse's kind of list they put up with all the startups. Like, there's some epic companies that are now starting to come out of New Zealand. So before, when we were trying to just hire zero staff, there wasn't really Zero and Trade Me was like the two options of people that had done anything at scale. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, that amount of talent that's going to be floating around that will be interchangeable between different companies at different scales, it will be game changing. So I think as a country, we've had to go on that journey and kind of build that talent in, and look at how we pull people in as well. So New Zealand's a very attractive place to be in, to live. And so being able to kind of pull that talent globally in here, I think the more that we can do. And so that's probably one of the disadvantages of being here. The other disadvantage is people can get sucked into thinking New Zealand's a great test market. And I think it's yes, it's handy as a place to get started, but it can also probably send you down the wrong path. And so I think when people start here, you have to think globally right from the get-go. And like I could have counted probably on one hand in the early days the amount of clients that we had here and the people that we thought we were building product for. And then as you head into the US or head into Australia, what the requirements that they needed were different. And for us studying enterprise tech, like New Zealand companies move incredibly slowly. I always thought there was going to be, I don't know why I thought New Zealand companies or large corporates were going to have this kind of, we want to get shit done attitude. For me, New Zealand enterprise is dead. It's so slow moving because I just don't feel like there's this hunger and this pressure like that you get when you go to the US or to Australia. There's so much competition that when you're inside those large organizations, there's a real desire to get stuff done. We have to move fast because company ABC is breathing down our neck. Here, there are two of them. There's going to be two big companies in that space. You just can't survive with such a small market. And so they just don't move that quickly. So if you're trying to build enterprise technology, you're just not going to get any real urgency to get stuff done here. And so I think that's probably the downside of being New Zealand is it's not a great test market in the enterprise software space. Then just the time zone issues is always a hard one. But as I said, like, COVID has flattened the earth. And so that whole thing of not being able to kind of sell and be here and be based here, I think that's certainly evaporated. So there's some epic people that you can build really good global teams from here, and then how you connect to folks in other regions is a lot easier.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm thinking just sort of some wrapping up stuff so we don't take up too much more of your time. Can you maybe sort of talk to advice that you would share with others that, maybe some sort of standouts from your journey around how you like to operate, or ways that you encourage others with your mentoring or talking to others? Are there some specific tips and things that you like to encourage people to take on board?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting question. So, yeah, it's for me it's the surrounding yourself with epic people. Like, building a company is so freaking hard, and if you're going to spend a ridiculous amount of time with these individuals, make sure that you surround yourselves with the right people, because you're going to spend a huge amount of time day in, day out fighting the fight. And if you don't feel like you've got the right people around you, or you're going to clash right from the get-go, it's only going to go one way. The other thing that people are always going to say is, make sure it's something that you're deeply passionate about, which I don't know if I was I can't say I was deeply passionate about legal, but I am now. Like, as in, it's a space that when you get into it, you have to be passionate about the customer and the outcome and what you're trying to do. But when everyone sort of says, make sure you follow your own passions, it becomes your passion as you get into it. So, like, I think there's a different approach to it, because otherwise, like, you'd all be kind of trying to do something kind of vanilla, or looking at something that you're super passionate about. But there's some really cool stuff hidden in plain sight, as like when you dig into an industry. I did see someone the other day online talking about that, to really build something in the legal space, you've had to have come from a legal background to really understand it. Like, obviously I call bullshit on that, because I had zero legal background at all, but what I was incredibly curious about the space. So it actually, in some ways, I feel like it freed my mind, because I had zero preconceptions around the way people operated. So I got to ask all the stupid questions, and the why and the why and the why, and the dig in. And then you, like, if you're that sort of way inclined, you can start to see the gold that's hidden right in front of people's faces. But if you've grown up in a space, you've grown up in an industry, you sometimes accept it for the way it is. And I remember in the early days, Tim and myself going and talking to some folks in legal teams, because we were looking at like LawVu in the early days was like the unbundling legal matters. And we're trying to like break it down and what stuff would the lawyers do and what stuff could you do as an individual. And he was like, oh, you can't do that. You don't understand how complex these legal matters are. And it's like, it's all in but like when you actually dug in, they're doing the same freaking things. The detail changes, but the actual step-by-step process was identical for every single type of the same type of work, but they couldn't see it because they cared so much about the detail that they didn't realize that everything they did along the way was so formulaic. But because I didn't care about the detail, I cared about the process, we're able to kind of see that. So that's also can be a superpower, that you, as long as you've got a deep passion, you're curious about something, it really can kind of open your eyes up to a whole, like an industry that you actually have no experience in. And so I think that's always something that I say to people is like, you don't have to have had a huge background in a region to be able to kind of create a dent. And I feel like the space that we're in and a lot of the folks that we have coming in, they've got such a curiosity and they've got such a desire to help our customers achieve these amazing outcomes and make their work life better, that they get super passionate about this. And suddenly we've all become kind of legal ops experts and we care so deeply about this sort of space, but not all of us came from it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. What would you say was sort of has been your darkest day on this journey, the sort of hardest thing that you've had to deal with?
I've been pretty fortunate that there hasn't been that many dark days in LawVu, that you know, we've had goals and targets and we've kind of been able to kind of move towards them, and that everything's been going in the right direction. Probably the hardest ones was, yeah, we obviously during COVID had to lay off a number of folks early on the kind of across the board, not a huge amount, but again, every person that you're kind of talking to and actually having to kind of make those decisions where you look at the numbers, you look at kind of what we're doing, what happens if we don't hit our targets, what's this going to do? And so kind of preempting that and having to kind of make those calls, and then having to relay that back to the rest of the team to be like, this is a call we made, we're letting go of, you know, some of your colleagues and your friends and things there, but this is the right thing to do. Trust us, and the company can survive and continue on. And so and you've got to think about what that was like for those people to kind of receive that message, and it's you're sacrificing a few so the company can kind of continue and grow. So that was probably in some ways the hardest time, because we sort of did a whole whack of people in one go, but we felt like we can either take a small step-by-step approach and let a few people go and then see how we go, and then what happens if we don't hit them, we're going to go again, and then it could get worse. So we just took the approach of, let's go bigger sooner so we can do this once, and then kind of remessage that. So I think that was probably one of the tougher things to kind of do. And then other than that, being pretty fortunate. Either that or I've just buried it in my mind. I can't remember. Then someone will watch this and be like, but what about this? And it's like, I forgot about it. So it's my coping mechanism. You kind of just, you move on, you focus on the positive stuff. You have to be, that's what keeps you going.
Yeah, well, there's always another challenge to deal with, isn't there? So you can't spend too much time looking back.
100%. There's always things, and there's always those decisions every single day that you make, and some sit with you longer, and others, I spoke about this in another podcast, that in some ways I'm as deep as a puddle, and I think that also becomes my kind of secret sauce, that there's only so many times you can look back at the decisions you've made and question that, and if you can end up in this paralysis where you actually just need to make a call, live with it, move on, and then you feel that it's the right decision, and you can't spend too much time analyzing it, because you end up just kind of paralyzed, and you just got to feel like you're making the right call day after day, and hopefully that's leading you in the right direction.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing else I can think of that would be I'm obviously always keen, and I do have people reach out every now and then through LinkedIn just saying, look, I'd love to pick your brains and talk through or ask questions around kind of decisions, and I suppose I can get kind of more in detail with individuals on that. Like, I'm always surprised at how little people kind of reach out as well, and the folks that have, I've been, it's weirdly quite therapeutic for yourself as well when you're kind of sharing the things in decisions they've been, and it's really cool to kind of connect with other folks that are in the New Zealand startup space, because it can be quite a lonely thing when you're kind of getting up and running, and you're got a lot of decisions to make. When you sitting there and you're looking at your LinkedIn feed, it looks like everyone is smashing it, and you're like, why is this not working for me? And why is this so hard? Because you don't share the shit stuff. Like, I'm not posting, I had to do this decision. I'm sharing the fact that I'm traveling to this conference, I'm doing this thing, and everything on my LinkedIn feed looks golden, and everything's up and to the right. And that's the social media world that we live in. So, if at times if people kind of want to get real or ask certain questions or how I kind of went through a process, I'm certainly connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like it's been quite cool to jump on with a few folks and do a Zoom call and you talk for an hour and a bit. And I've had kind of regular catch ups with some folks, and yeah, there's something nice both sharing and kind of helping people along. And I'd love to see the New Zealand tech ecosystem continue to grow and thrive, because like I do believe as a small country at the bottom of the world, like yes, we've relied a lot on agriculture and other stuff, but like we've got some, like we're really well positioned. We've got some epic talent here, and we can do some really cool stuff from this part of the world and grow massive companies from here. So like anything that I can do to contribute to that in some small way, and that, like, I'd be keen to get involved.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And yeah, I think the community aspect and that the opportunities to feed in and support others that are coming through can make a really big difference, right?
Yeah, it's huge, and I think that's always the thing. The early days, the things that kind of accelerate it for us were the conversations that I got to have with people and the people that I connected with. And again, it's talking about when you're pulling people into the company that have been there and done that, it accelerates you as a company, and you just learn things. You take elements of what they've done and you kind of remold it for what works for you. And yeah, like everything is, it's very hard to invent stuff. You're basically big, borrowing and stealing the whole time as you're kind of forming a company, and and then you kind of mold it into what works for you, and that enables you to kind of take off and go a little bit faster.
Well, that's great. Oh, thank you very much, Sam. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much for calling in.
Yeah, cheers. Well, I trust you enjoyed this episode and hearing from Sam Kidd of LawVu. The New Zealand Business Podcast has been proudly brought to you by One New Zealand and Gorilla Technology. Be sure to listen in to our other episodes featuring many of New Zealand's most successful leaders and innovators, including founders such as Sir Rod Drury of Xero, Cecilia and James Robinson of My Food Bag, Sir Peter Beck of Rocket Lab, Brooke Roberts of Sharesies, Sir Michael Hill, and many, many more. And because a rising tide lifts all boats, be sure to contribute to lifting New Zealand's success by sharing a favourite episode of the New Zealand Business Podcast with a friend. Well, thank you very much for listening in. This is Paul Spain signing out. I'll catch you on the next episode. And a quick reminder, if you haven't already, grab that cyber risk reduction review, free for a limited number of listeners, and will help get you up to speed on where your organisation is at from a cybersecurity perspective. Find the link in the show notes. Catch you on the next episode. See you then.
The New Zealand Business Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, your strategic and proactive IT partner.